took like at the start, there's like a 5 to 10 second lag between exchanges. Later in the show, it picks up and cleaned up a bit, but man, it was fucked.
Yeah. And then I saw Colonel Kurtz was going after him pretty hard, and there was a Twitter exchange, and I'm like, oh, Jesus. Oh, God.
I don't know. Like I said, people were like really getting after Ralph. I'm like, I mean, what do you guys care?
Well, at least it's not you. At least it's Ralph. Did Ralph?
Yeah, when he says he wasn't on anything, I don't care. Like, I don't care if he was or wasn't. I don't have any reason to believe or disbelieve him. It literally doesn't matter to me if he was. But some people get really invested in this stuff, and it's like, well, what do you care if he is?
Well, you know how it is. I mean, you know better than anybody else right now that anything. Because so there was this that like discovery thing. Maybe I think it was what I was reading. And there's just a random thing from 2009. It's like a CPS case, and all these people speculating that like you did some shit. And I'm like, and I read your response where it's just like a change in like foster status or something. That's all.
No, it's even less than that. So the files from 2009, but we weren't even involved in 2009. Our involvement was in let's see, it would have been trying to think. Oh, late 2010, mid to late 2010 through 2011 or the beginning of 2011, because we were foster parents for these boys, 2 boys out here. And then Lady Rackets and I were going to so those 2 boys got respite care from, we were caring for them, but they got respite care because we were going to Canada with my family. And the morning we were supposed to get on a plane, Lady Ragged started bleeding. She was pregnant with our second kid. And so we had to go to the fucking hospital, and the hospital said, you know, you're okay. Everything's going to be fine, but you need to be on bed rest. No heavy lifting, really no lifting, and take it as easy as possible. So then we had to contact the county and be like, sorry, we can't keep fostering these kids, because I was still working at the time. It was before I went to law school and everything. And it's like, I can't be around these for all day for the kids. And Lady Raggets can't like pick them up because she's pregnant and she's bleeding. So she has to take it easy. So we had these 2 boys. It was like, one was 2 or 3 and the other was like 4 or 5, I think. And so we had to let them go to the family that was providing respite. They took over. And then I think those kids went back to their mom a little while later, but we kind of lost track of them after that because, you know, you don't really track them. I don't know, unless you're weird. Yeah. I mean,
unless you're weird.
Well, I shouldn't say that. Some people who have really long-term placements with kids, they'll like, you know, be involved in those kids' lives for a long time. If it's multiple years, we had them for a couple months. And it was really nice. We thought we might have a long-term placement, but ended up having the scare with the pregnancy. And then we never fostered after that. But yeah, so that would have been near the end of the file because my son was born in 2011. And it's like people made this big deal. It's like, no. Like that's not our file. The ones that are our files say Rekieta in the case name. And in that one, they redacted the case name because it's not us, guys. Like, but yeah, they speculate on everything. But the thing is, I don't think Ralph has any particular conditions that he has to meet for anything. I know people are very concerned about me because I have conditions to meet. And it's like, well, I'm meeting those.
Right. And so when it comes to, you know, how things are going now, I noticed this, and forgive me if this is kind of gay, but I watched your show I think it was with Ty Beard recently. And I made the comment, I don't remember who I was talking to, somebody through text or something. And I was like, Nick looks really, really good tonight.
Hey, thanks, man. And
I was like, this is great. I'm enjoying this. It might have been Art. I don't fucking remember. And I was like, yeah, he's looking great. And I think a lot of people have noticed, like, you look good.
Well, there was this thing, and people, I don't know, they thought I was lying. It's like, well, you can't convince people you weren't, but I was sick for 20 fucking days. Two shots in a row of 10-day sicknesses. And I dropped down to 148 pounds, man. Like, Jesus. I was tiny and I fucking hated it because this is where this is the weight I wanted to be before I hit the gym. was 165, which is where I am now. It's where I got to right before getting sick. And then I got sick for 10 days, started to put the weight back on, got sick 10 days again. And it was like, that was fucking devastating because neither time I couldn't eat at all. Like for 10 straight days. The second time, even a liquid diet was literally painful. I had fucking pain as I swallowed even soup. So
Ew.
it was good times, but people are like, you look terrible. I'm like, I know. Thanks. I wake up every morning and see it. Don't worry.
You weighed less than Zia's tits.
Yeah.
That's true. That's true. I weighed them the other day. They are in fact 148 pounds. I have a lot of back.
Nice. Well done.
Yeah. Thank
well
you.
done.
That's what I was going for.
And one of the things that's been pretty interesting to watch is, and you can look at any chat and see it immediately. What do you say to people? Or you don't say shit. Actually, I wouldn't say shit either. But like, what do you like? How do you react in like your mind when people are just fucking throwing like child abuse allegations like at you?
I mean, part of it's frustrating because a lot of it is from a lack of information. So when the in the search warrant, like one of the CPS calls was mentioned. Now, these calls happen when somebody decides they don't like something, and so they call in. But CPS ignored those calls for us. Now, I've been fucking swatted. I've had CPS call a couple CPS calls. It turns out they don't tell you. You have these couple CPS calls go through, and they decided that they weren't worth looking into. But then when they get incorporated into a search warrant, even though they were completely ignored by CPS, but for some reason that's not explained, they decided that this is the basis for a search warrant, or part of the basis for a search warrant. People then go, oh, this must be a true thing. And it's like, well, no, that doesn't make it true at all. And I haven't really been able to talk about any of that because, the determinations by CPS are part of the case. So until those come out, and, probably when the case is done, I got to kind of just keep quiet about it. But I can't really be mad about people thinking that way either because, well, what the fuck are they supposed to do? They don't have the information. So I just sit there and I have to deal with it. Or like there's a bunch of people like, you gave your child cocaine. It's like, really? Is that like, you really think that's what's going on? Okay. I guess if that's what you need to think, but that's not even alleged. That's not even alleged by Child Protective Services or the state in my case. So people come to these conclusions rather than going, man, this looks really odd. These test results seem strange. And me going, yeah, they're pretty fucking weird, aren't they? They're like, no, they must be 100% accurate and they must mean this other thing. And you're like, I can't really talk about any of this, which kind of fucking sucks. Cause, that's the way these cases go. You don't want to say anything at all because if you say something, they'll try and use it against you in some weird way. And it's like, well, I don't know. I know what didn't happen. I know for a fact what didn't happen. So I kind of know that like a lot of the narrative out there around some of these things is just it's fiction. But again, people have only the information that they get. So you just have to kind of suck it up and deal with it while the government's like staring you down the barrel of the fucking Liberty gun. And you have to just wait and let people have their opinions. It sucks, but that's what you got to do.
Yeah, and I was talking to somebody about this, and it was probably just somebody in my chat because I was thinking to myself, I'm like, why? Like, because a lot of things are starting to line up, and I'm like, why would a local government do this? And then somebody in the chat with one statement made a lot of sense. They were like, to get the W, bro, and I'm like, oh wow, that's that stupid chat makes so much sense, just to get the W, bro. And I'm like that, and then you think back to all the times where you've watched documentaries on people and somehow the state or the local government would have so much shit. And then they had to work for years to get their name cleared. And it turns out like that. And I'm not saying this is the case. I'm just saying that it turns out that the state had fabricated all this shit just to destroy this random person. And it's like, wow, that's fucked up, man.
Look, if people are really confused about a lot of the shit in the case, and like, they're like, holy shit, this is a surprise. You're not alone. There being a surprise on some of this really outrageous shit. But, you know, like the process of going after that stuff and going after that. First of all, the process of getting that information is a whole fucking story. And then the process of going after and trying to correct what has to be erroneous is like, you can't just be like, nuh-uh. Some people are like, well, why don't you just bring clean drug tests to the government and get your kids back? It's like, oh, you think I don't have a fucking litany of clean drug tests to give into the government? They just don't give you your kids back. It doesn't work that way. It'd be amazing if it did, but there's a lot of people that could get clean drug tests and just hand them over, but they wouldn't be clean. Luckily for me, I'm clean. That was easy as fuck. So it's like having the clean drug tests is great, but you can't just give them to the government and have them say, oh, sorry. They don't do that. They come up with a story, just like everybody in the chat has a story, and they have to fill in the pieces. And your story is not the one that they've come up with. I promise you, no matter who you are in the world, when the government comes up with a story about you, whatever they come up with is not right. Even if yours might be worse, but theirs is incorrect because only you have all the details. Well, you don't just get to tell them, well, let me tell you the details and then you'll change your mind, because they've made up their mind on their story and they don't care what facts you have, because now confirmation bias is at play. That's why the court system exists. I have to wait for the court's timeline to fight against all this shit. And that's why there are rules and processes to do all of this. But, you know, the internet isn't a place to wait for answers. The internet is a place where we go, I want to know now. I want to know, because the story, right? It's salacious. It's exciting. It's fucking insane. And I'm sitting here going, God, I'm hearing the story and it sounds way more interesting than my life. And it's horrifying, but it's like, I know that's not actually the truth, but yeah, I have to tell the story somewhere else. It really fucking sucks, because I like telling stories all the time.
Yeah. What is what does the process look like to get your kids back? If you can talk about that, like, what does that actual process look like?
Yeah, well, there's a couple things that have happened. I talked about this a little bit on Ralph's show, but I don't know how well you'll be able to hear because of the connection issues. But what happened initially is called an emergency placement. So they raided my house and allegedly pulled some substance out of it that they deemed to be illegal. I'll say allegedly because we don't actually have any admissible testing yet. They do field tests on substances to find out what they might be. And then they take those and send them off to, in Minnesota, it's the Bureau of Criminal Apprehension Laboratory to confirm whatever substance there is and to get official measurements. That hasn't happened yet. So right now, they allegedly pulled an illegal substance out of my house. And there's a statute that says if children are present in a home with an illegal substance, then the presumption is that the children are in danger. And this merits an emergency placement. So the kids get placed with family, if possible. We have lots of close families, so the kids are with family, thank goodness. But that happened on the 23rd. What happens next is you get a child in need of protective services trial. It's like a very accelerated thing. And that's where the state has to make a case that the children are in need of ongoing protective services or not. And then you get to make your case against the state that says, like, you presumably, like, I guess some parents could decide that their kids needed it, but presumably you would say my kids don't need protective services. And then you go to court and have a trial on that with witnesses and evidence and all of that stuff. We haven't had that yet. That's coming up in the future. And in the meanwhile, you have everything else going on where you have, during the meantime, you have sort of a plan to have visits, and they call it, Minnesota has a presumptive reunification plan where they want to put your kids back with the family. And I put that in air quotes because, well, you know, child protective workers don't always want to do that, even when they say they do, and they sometimes act contrary to that. That process is weird because it happens parallel in court and out of court. So out of court, you do a whole bunch of shit. Like we drug test randomly all the time. Whenever they ask, you know, you go in for a drug test, and all of our drug tests are clean, very, you know, like it's not hard, and no drugs, no alcohol either. So anybody who has any suspicions about me secretly drinking, guys, I got a month of clean fucking tests ever since they started asking for them.
And that's something that's required is like clean, just test until like a hearing or something. How does that work?
It can be. Anytime there's a substance involved in Minnesota, it doesn't matter what the substance is or what the involvement is. If there is a substance, they default to abstinence as a requirement, complete abstinence of any substances. So they have that going on. And then you have scheduled visits and supervised visits, and then you work towards like a safety plan and all of this stuff. So that's your parallel planning that's going on with the government, along with your case, which is entirely separate. So you have to do this weird straddle where in your case, you have to posture as, the government has no right to my children. I have the rights to my children. They've infringed on my rights. Whereas with the case plan, you have to comply with what they want you to do if you want to see your kids. And they try to use this against people. They try to get people to make statements or to gather evidence against them in the process of complying with getting their kids back. They're like, oh, well, you just got to tell us about all your stuff. And the really kind of nefarious thing about it is kind of like how they had before they had no fault divorce, right? You had to have a reason to get divorced.
Yeah.
Well, what people would do is they just lie. They just say they were having an affair, right? When they just wanted a divorce from someone, and they'd lie to create the reason. Well, you have tons of parents who will admit to doing illegal things just to get their kids back. And then those admissions get used against them in criminal court. And basically, a lot of times it doesn't end up in prison. So they're perfectly happy to make an admission that'll then get their kids back, but then they'll get a felony charge or whatever and end up on probation. But if you're trying to actually defend yourself, it makes it very difficult because the government decides that you're one thing. And if you want to tell them no, they go, well, no, we've decided that. And until you admit to us that you are what we think, then you don't get your kids back. But you're not getting your kids back on that timetable anyway. So it's kind of really fucking deceptive. It's a messy system, but it's the system that we have. And, for some people, like they really probably shouldn't be around their kids, right? Like a lot of people are very dangerous to their children. Obviously, I don't think I am. And I know the internet will have some disagreement out there, but hey, you guys don't actually see my life at all. And that's fine. Like there's a reason you don't. But I have to run this sort of parallel track where I'm defending my rights on one hand, at the same time, complying with the government as much as possible without giving them any sort of incriminating statements or admissions that they would try and use against me in the criminal case.
So you're saying, and this is how the process would loosely work, depending on who's involved. But you're saying that kids will be utilized in a way to pressure parents into admitting to stuff that may not be true, just to it's like a plea kind of deal, like get their kids back and move on.
People lie to make plea deals all the time.
Right.
People admit to crimes that they don't believe they're guilty of all the time. And I'm not saying specifically that the state has that intention, but the system is set up in such a way that those pressure levers are applied to people in that way. And that is a mess. And severing the two cases is really, really difficult because the government agency that's prosecuting you is the same government agency that's in charge of the child protective case. And in our case, it's even the same attorney on both of them. So it's like, you want us to say things over here that you would use over here. And some people would be tempted to just say it. But, you have a Fifth Amendment right for a whole lot of reasons. But the other thing is they want you to tell their story, their version of your story. They don't really care what your version is because you can tell them, you can even show them evidence, piles and piles of evidence that you are not the thing that they say you are. And yet still they'll just be like, nuh-uh.
Right.
We go, you must be this. It must be this. And so eventually you have to take them to court and they have to meet their burden of saying you are the thing that they say. But,
right.
The real rub for the county is most of the people they deal with don't have the means to fight in these cases. And when they encounter people with the means to fight, it makes things really complicated for them. And well, I mean, I guess that's just too bad.
Well, so what do you think's what would you foresee? Because I've asked so many people their personal opinion, and they're not even involved. And I've given my opinion. I've asked Drex's opinion. What would be your best case scenarios, like end all be all when this is all over? Like, what would you see happen? Like, you're just
Best case scenario?
Yeah.
Well, obviously the best case scenario would be I have my kids back and I beat all the charges.
right. Yeah.
I mean, as simple as that.
Right.
That's and it's not an outlandish possibility, really. The government has a tough case to make. I can't talk about why.
Yeah.
It's frustrating, but I can't talk about why. But it's not an open and shut case. In a lot of instances, that could be there's a familiarity to the fact pattern for a lot of people, but there's some complications that, again, those things have to be brought up in a very specific manner. I can't talk about them here, but I'm sure you'll all get to read about them when the documents hit. So that's that. I don't know if that's going to happen. Like, I'm not trying to get my hopes up or anybody else's, but that would be the best case scenario.
Right. Oh, and I have a fun question.
Yeah.
Because you just said it. You said it was easy as hell to get clean.
Yeah. To be clean is easy as hell.
Well, good. There you go.
Like,
I saw somebody in chat and they're like, "How dare you say it's easy to be clean?" Like,
oh my God. Guys, do you know how easy it is to not like drink or do drugs? It's really easy. You're all doing it right now. Like,
I don't know about that.
A huge portion of the chat, you guys are not drinking or doing drugs. It's really easy.
There's somebody that's wasting the chat right now.
Yeah, there's definitely someone that's either on
yeah.
drugs or drinking. I don't know. For me, it wasn't easy
No, I know.
to get sober.
That's a joke. It's a joke.
Yeah.
But it is easy to not do drugs now, I guess.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Well, after the worst hangover of my damn life 2 days ago, I'm like, yeah, it's really easy to not drink right now. I almost died, man. July 4th was wild.
But no, up until the government asked me to, I was able to drink, right? Like, we paid our bonds, so we had no conditions on the criminal case. And then the family case, they said, no drugs or alcohol. And it was like, up until then I could drink. And it was like, well, I mean, I guess that sucks. But then all you do, I mean, for us, all we did was we just took all the liquor and got it out of our house. Like, so I don't have any alcohol around. So then you just don't drink.